Okay, fine. So I'm reading each sentence and we will see. So just to briefly summarize what he has been saying earlier. See, if you look only at the physical world, like scientists, they are not aware of things which are above the physical world. So when they look, they see that life is coming out of matter. Okay. Then also out of animals, human beings also are coming. There's an evolution. Charles Darwin very clearly stated that. Okay, so the spiritual evolution has already been found long ago in India, but it was never discussed in detail. Okay, the Dashavatar is a very clear indication of an evolution, spiritual evolution, not a biological evolution. But when Darwin has given 1850 or 1860 or whatever, I think even earlier, he gave the idea that there is a evolution, biological evolution, and there is a constant improvement in the bodily, organic body functions are becoming more and more complex. The some creatures have only one sense, some creatures have two senses, some creatures have five senses. Then, so obviously there is a complexity growing, and that complexity ends up at present in the physical world with the human brain. The human brain is capable of logic and clear thinking, which even the animal does not have. So there's an evolution. So when you look at it, you feel that matter is the origin of everything. But if matter is the origin and only energy is the origin, energy is not consciousness. So there should be a chaotic thing. But you see that there is no chaos, there is an arrangement of things. So you get confused. Is these things which are coming out, plants and all that, they seem to act with consciousness. Okay, the creepers, the birds, they are all, there's a consciousness, their movements are all conscious, there's a purpose. There's a aim and an intention in their movements. So you are, what is creating the world? Is it really consciousness or is it force? So scientists insist it is force, but there is also consciousness. So so it is confusing, and you don't have a solution to that. When is consciousness acting and when is force acting? There is a confusion in the mind. So simply saying, let us examine the other theory, that it is not force that is creating the world, but let us start with consciousness is creating the world, and let us see what it leads us to. That's what he's going to discuss in this paragraph. So on that hypothesis, there must be behind the action of the material energy a secret involved consciousness, cosmic, infinite, building up through the action of that frontal energy, its means of an evolutionary manifestation, a creation out of itself in the boundless finite of the material universe. So he's saying, we admit that force is there. That is very clear. We can't deny. But behind that force, is there a consciousness hiding and guiding it? You know, it is, I think we discussed it last time, like it's very interesting, this consciousness hiding behind is like the prompter on the stage. No? When there is a drama going on and the actors are reciting their lines, but sometimes they can forget their lines. Okay, and if they forget their lines, in the wings, there is a prompter who is sitting there with the text and he whispers the next line which he has forgotten to the actor. Okay, so it is like that. But you don't see, the audience does not see the prompter. So exactly in the same way, is this consciousness, which is the prompter, hiding in the wings and telling force what to do? That's what he said. So this is the hypothesis. So that hypothesis, I'm telling you what the hypothesis is. The hypothesis that consciousness has created the world and after hiding itself behind the force is working like an artisan shaping the dumb but responsive substance of matter. This is what he's saying. We'll examine this theory that consciousness is there hiding, you don't see it, but it's there behind the force and guiding the force. And like an artisan, like a like a potter making a pot, and the pot he is using dumb matter, but is responsive to your touch and is making beautiful pottery out of it. So this is what Sridhar is saying. It is responsive. The matter is without consciousness, but it responds to the touch. Okay, so you can use clay which is dead, but you can make beautiful forms out of it, and that's what the universe is, beautiful forms. So there is a theory. So now we read that sentence. That's what he's saying. That let us examine this theory and see what happens. So the apparent inconscience, I'm reading the next sentence. The apparent inconscience of the material energy would be an indispensable condition for the structure of the material world substance in which this consciousness intends to involve itself so that it may grow by evolution out of its apparent opposite. We stop here. So he's saying, with this theory, what happens? The apparent inconscience, note the word apparent, because consciousness is hiding there behind it. Okay, so the apparent inconscience of the material energy would be an indispensable condition for the structure of the material world substance in which this consciousness intends to involve itself. So that it may grow by evolution out of its apparent opposite. We'll continue with the image of the potter making the pot. Okay, so the inconscient material is essential because that's a substance with which I'm going to create my pots and pans. So the divine does need an inconscient material. It is inconscient at this, apparently inconscient at this level, but at the highest level it is the subtlest of substance, and that is the Sat. So the divine needs the substance to create the world, and that substance is Sat. At the highest level subtle, at the lowest level quite gross and apparently inconscient. Okay? So you have to admit that there is a dead material, but consciousness is hiding inside. And now the funny part is that this potter who is making these pots, he puts some of his own character into the pots that he's creating. That's what Sridhar is saying. He's saying that the consciousness creates the world, but introduces some of itself into the forms that it is doing. Okay, it's a very interesting way of looking at it. No? So when a poem is being written by a poet, that poem is a reflection of the thoughts or the emotions of the poet. So something of it is coming into it. When an artist is creating a painting, you can't say that something of the artist is not there in the painting. In fact, this is subtly a truth, na? Because we know that suppose I am using a pen, okay, my atmosphere goes into the pen. Okay, suppose I am using even my shirts, they will absorb some of the vibrations of my own vibrations. This is how those who are psychics, psychics used in the normal sense of the English word, those who are psychics, if they touch my shirt, they will be able to contact me, my consciousness, through the vibrations that shirt is giving. Okay, so this is what Sridhar is saying. He's saying that the divine uses this inconscient substance, but puts something of himself into it. So that's the divine presence behind the apparently dead forms. Okay, it's an interesting way of looking at it. It's a different way of looking at this transcendent, cosmic, and individual. Okay? So, without some such device.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please go ahead.
I am very confused when you say that a psychic person can touch the shirt and get in touch with the consciousness of the person who's wearing that shirt.
Yes.
But I don't understand that the shirt would have what vibrations of that person.
Oh, okay. Every human being is built in a different way, na?
Yes.
And that is they are finally the character of anybody or the color of anybody. Ultimately, it becomes only vibrations. Okay. Through those vibrations, you can get the atmosphere of people. Don't you, nowadays they speak very often of vibes, no? Sometimes,
yes.
yeah, sometimes you know what is meant by that, okay? Everything is defined by the vibrations. How does Sri Aurobindo, when someone is writing a poem and they send the poem to him and say, sir, please tell me from where this is coming, Sri Aurobindo will look at the poem and feel the vibrations in it, and those vibrations will tell him which level it is coming from, because each level, the vibrations are different. Okay, so this is something quite common, Yasmin. In America, they use these psychics to trace missing people. Okay, it's not at all uncommon. It's not a very, very spiritual thing even. It is quite subtle physical. Okay, if I use a something, part of my vibrations goes into that also. This is what is called vasanas. Okay, a vasana in Indian, it's a very interesting concept in India. Okay, the vasana is the anything that comes to you, it leaves a faint impression. Okay, so it leaves a faint impression. Every event that's happening to you, okay, it leaves a faint impression on you. It's like if I have a glass of pure water and I take one drop of red and put it into it, that red will dissolve, but it will make that water a little reddish. That's a vasana, and that remains in your character. Okay, so everything is finally vibrations. If you remember, if you go back to the origin of things, everything starts with vibrations. Remember the 5 basic vibrations at the highest level. Om also is a vibration which creates the world. Everything is vibrations ultimately. In fact, Mother says in the agenda that when she is seeing the physical world, she is seeing everything through only vibrations. And each vibration has got its own character and its own feeling. Okay, so this is something very well known. This is not something unusual. Okay? Okay, I'll give you another example. Mother used to say when people wanted to join the ashram, they'd say, please send me your photographs. Okay. Now, by looking at a photograph, how does mother know ashram to know whether this person is ready or not? Through the vibrations. Okay. She will look at that photograph and through that photograph establish a subtle connection with the person. And then with that person, she sees what it is, what the vibrations are, and she knows whether he is ready for a spiritual life or not. Sometimes they say, yes, you can come for darshan. Sometimes you say, no, you prepare yourself more and then come afterwards. Or refer to me back again after 1 year. He should write like that to people. So, Yasmin?
Yes, I understand. And
Yeah.
also, very often mother used to tell in the earlier part of the ashram days that
Yes.
the sadhak should not mix and, like keep to yourself. Is it because of these vibrations which could affect a person from the other person?
Yes, absolutely. Whenever we are in contact with people, their vibrations are coming into us, our vibrations are going into them. That is why the atmosphere is series. And the Fibonacci, there are many ways of examining mathematical. One is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, that is one way. That's it. Arithmetic progression. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, it goes on. Arithmetic. Then there is another sequence which goes 1, 2, multiply 2 by 2, 4. Multiply 4 by 4, there is a geometric progression. All these you can see in nature. Okay. Then, so 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. It goes on. This also you will see in nature. Then the Fibonacci series is like this. 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Now, 2 plus 1, you go backwards, 3. 3 plus 2 goes to 5. Okay. So, 5 plus 4 is equal to 9. This sequence is there in the, it's called the Fibonacci series. It is there in the conch shell. Okay. You'll see in the beginning, the spirals are very small, but as you keep going higher and higher, they become bigger and bigger spirals. So this is what Siddhartha means by mathematical architecture of design, of effective arrangement of numbers, okay, of adaptation of means to ends. Adaptation of means to ends also we discussed the other day. Okay, all plants need, one example only, all plants need water, but when there's too much water, there's a problem. So nature adjusts itself, and these plants in the mangroves manage to survive. Or if there's too little water also, we discussed in the desert, the cactus develops characteristics which can hold water and survive with very little. It applies even to animals. Huh? Even to animals. A camel can manage without much water in the desert. We can't. So this is what Sridhar is saying. Adaptation of means to ends. Adaptation of means to ends also you can see in nature. Very interesting. This is a whole subject in itself. Yesterday we were just discussing some of the things, but you will see that everything is there like that in nature. We discussed only two things, the nose. Okay. Do you think that the human knows only one function it has got? Smelling? No. The divine can create the nose in such a way that it can be used for other purposes, like the elephant. The elephant uses its nose, which is the trunk, even to pick up objects. In fact, the elephant trunk, the bottom part, has got tiny muscles. It can even pick up a small pin, okay, or a coin which has fallen on the ground, okay. Or if you take the nose, the anteater is using his nose like a mouth. It is going into an ant burrow and swallowing all the, and so this is the way it can act, okay. We have got nails, okay, but can nail be used for anything else? Human beings don't use the nails, they are only for protection of the fingertips. Okay? But in a bird, that nail becomes a hook, a violent hook which it can use for latching on to anything and even killing. An eagle uses its claws to kill its prey. Okay, so it can be used like that. There's so many different. Everything you can see is like that. Even our ears. Okay, even the tongue. Okay, the tongue is only for tasting. No, the snake uses its tongue for sensing the vibrations around. Okay, so this is the adaptation of means to ends. Okay? This principle is infinite, goes on everywhere. So he's ultimately what do you come to? You come to this that there is consciousness and there is also unconsciousness. And the consciousness has entered into the unconsciousness, is hiding there with the intention of coming out slowly. That's what he's saying in the paragraph. Okay, so I'm reading after the discussion, I'll just read out the summary so that you get the whole thing in a quick nutshell. So we then summarize that a consciousness and will has created the universe, but has hidden itself in it and intends to evolve out of its apparent opposite. The inconscience below and the consciousness above would then be understandable. You can see the variations is because of consciousness, and you can see the fixed laws, that's because of the force. Okay? That's what he's saying in the para. All right, we have got about 8 minutes left. I think we can read the next one. No? All the unexplained processes of nature. It's about
a page. Do you want to read?
Yeah. Any one of you? Who will read?
All the unexplained processes of nature would find their meaning and their place if this hypothesis proved to be tenable. Energy seems to create substance, but in reality, as existence is inherent in conscious force, so also substance would be inherent in energy. The energy, a manifestation of the force, substance, a manifestation of the secret existence. But as it is a spiritual substance, it would not be apprehended by the material sense until it is given by energy the form of matter feasible by that sense. One begins to understand also how arrangement of design, quantity and number can be a base for the manifestation of quality and property. For design, uh, quantity and number are powers of existent substance. Quantity and property are powers of the consciousness and its force that reside in the existence. They can then be made manifest and operative by a rhythm and process of substance. The growth of the tree out of the seed would be accounted for, like all other similar phenomena, by the indwelling presence of what we have called the real idea, the infinite self-perception of the significant form, the living body of its power of existence that has to emerge from its own self-compression in energy substance, would be carried internally in the form of the seed, carried in the occult consciousness involved in that form, and would naturally evolve out of it. There would be no difficulty either in understanding on this principle how infinitesimals of a material character like the gene and the chromosome can carry in them psychological elements to be transmitted to the physical form that has to emerge from the human seed. It would be at bottom on the same principle in the objectivity of matter as that which we find in our subjective experience. For we see that the subconscious physical carries in it a mental psychological content. Impressions of past events, habits, fixed mental and vital formations, fixed forms of character, and sends them up by an occult process to the waking consciousness, thus originating or influencing many activities of our nature.
So again, a one-page para, which we have to discuss in detail because we have got only 4 minutes left. We can't finish it. But I'll do one thing. I'll just mention a few things. He is now talking of number and quantity and quality. That's very interesting. Okay. Now take the vibrations of light. Okay. How are they related? Number and quality, quantity and quality are related. He's saying yes, very clearly, because suppose my vibration of a particular light, let us say blue, I don't know exactly scientifically how much, but so much megahertz. Okay, that means megahertz is so many times in 1 second it will vibrate up and down. Okay, the vibration goes on like that, and in 1 second, how many vibrations? That's a megahertz. So, but now it's a certain quantity. It will produce blue light. Suppose I change the number of vibrations and make it instead of 50, I make it 70. The color will change. The quality is changing. That's exactly what's happening. It's rather funny that quantity is determining quality. Okay, just like also if you see the atoms in a particular substance. Okay, hydrogen has got only one electron going around the nucleus. But if you have got 8, it becomes hydrogen. Oxygen. If it becomes 248, it becomes uranium. Okay, so silver, gold, all these things are only the number of electrons whirling in around the nucleus. So in other words, quantity is producing quality. Okay, that also is very stunning. So quantity is referred to force, Shakti, and quality is referred to consciousness. Okay, that's what he's saying in the para. And so this is what he's saying, and we will look at the details. Only 2 minutes left, but this is what he's discussing in this para here. There, and again, the psychological things also, how they are stored in a chromosome. Okay, it's not only the features of your parents that come down into the child. Okay, there's a combination of the features of the mother and the father, and you get a certain amount of thing both. Okay, There are very interesting family variations in a family. You will see sometimes there are some people who are very fair and some people who are fairly dark. Okay, the mother and father may be of different colors. Okay, then you see I may inherit the features of my father, but the color of my mother. Okay, all these things are. This is what he is explaining in this para, which we'll have a look next time. Okay, so we'll stop here today. We have got 1 minute more, but we'll have to see more in detail. I like to go into details. It's interesting to have both. There are some people who say, I don't want details, I only want the basic idea. So that is why I read out the summary. That will give you the basic idea. But how he is arguing and what are the words he uses, okay, if you want to read on your own, you have to know how he uses words. That's why we go into detail. I think it's worth it. Okay. And therefore we do only one para per period. But I think that's worth it. Okay, we stop here today.
We also think so.
Okay.
Yes, I agree too.
Yeah. So, I wish all of you.
Thank you, Rangada.
Okay, au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.